Hey everybody! Tonight we're diving into the wacky world of international trade where friends become foes over aluminum. That's right folks, it's the US-Canada trade war. It all started with a disagreement over tariffs, those pesky little taxes on imported goods. The US, in a move that surprised absolutely no one, decided to slap a hefty tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. Canada, being the polite and reasonable neighbor they are, initially tried to talk it out. But when that didn't work, they said, "Oh, you want to play that game? Two can play that game." And thus began a tit-for-tat tariff war, with each country imposing tariffs on a growing list of goods. Who knew international trade could be so petty? Now you might be thinking, John, this all sounds like a squabble between politicians, but it's much more than that. How does it affect me? Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because this trade war is hitting us all where it hurts, our wallets. When you go to the supermarket and see those rising prices, that's a direct result of these policies. Remember those tariffs we talked about? They make imported goods more expensive, and guess who ends up paying the price? That's right, you guessed it, consumers. Every time you buy something that's imported, you're feeling the impact. But it's not just about the price of your morning maple syrup going up a few cents. It's about the cumulative effect on your entire grocery bill and beyond. This trade war is impacting entire industries, leading to job losses on both sides of the border. Factories are shutting down, and office workers are finding themselves without jobs. Farmers, manufacturers, and small businesses are all feeling the pinch. The ripple effect is vast, affecting not just the big corporations but also the small local businesses that are the backbone of our economy. And as the trade war drags on, the economic consequences are only going to get worse. We're seeing more empty shopping malls, closed stores, and foreclosed homes. Unemployment rates are climbing and the future looks uncertain for many. So the next time you hear about trade policies and tariffs, remember, it's not just political jargon. It's about real people, real jobs, and real economic impacts that touch every aspect of our daily lives. Now, Canada may be known for its politeness, but they're not pushovers. When the US started throwing punches, Canada didn't just roll over. They came back swinging, and they aimed for the weak spots. Instead of imposing broad tariffs like the US, Canada took a more strategic approach, targeting specific goods and industries that would inflict maximum political pain. Remember those tariffs on Kentucky bourbon? Turns out, Canada is a major importer of American whiskey, and those tariffs hit Kentucky distilleries right in their wallets. And it wasn't just bourbon. Canada also targeted products like Florida orange juice, Wisconsin cheese, and even playing cards. The message was clear. You want to play dirty? We can play dirty too. This trade war isn't just a battle between two countries. It's a full-blown assault on the intricate web of global trade known as the supply chain. See, in today's interconnected world, products are often assembled using parts sourced from multiple countries. Take the automotive industry, for example. Cars assembled in the US might use Canadian steel, Mexican engines, and Chinese electronics. But when tariffs disrupt the flow of goods across borders, the entire supply chain grinds to a halt. The result? Production delays, factory closures, and job losses not just in the US and Canada, but in countries around the world. It's a domino effect, and it's a mess. Section 5 north of the border, south of recent political fallout. Unsurprisingly, this trade war has turned into a political hot potato on both sides of the border. In the US, it's become a major electoral issue, with voters in key states feeling the pain of higher prices and job losses. Meanwhile, in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been walking a tightrope, trying to balance the interests of Canadian businesses and workers while avoiding a full-blown trade war with the US. It's a delicate balancing act, and it's only gotten trickier as the trade war has dragged on. Section 6. Trudeau plays the long game, a unified Canada stands strong. Now you might be thinking, John, with all this talk of tariffs and retaliation, it sounds like Canada is spoiling for a fight. But that's not quite accurate. The reality is far more nuanced. Canada, under the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has been navigating a complex landscape of international trade with a blend of firmness and diplomacy. While it may seem like Canada is gearing up for a confrontation, the truth is that the country is simply standing its ground. Trudeau and his administration have been clear. They are not looking for a trade war, but they will not back down from defending Canadian interests. While Canada has shown that they're willing to stand up for themselves, they've also been careful not to escalate the conflict unnecessarily. This approach is about balance, asserting their rights without pushing the situation into a full-blown trade war. Trudeau has repeatedly emphasized that Canada doesn't want a trade war and is open to negotiation. He has reached out to international partners, seeking dialogue and cooperation rather than confrontation. This strategy aims to protect Canadian jobs and industries while maintaining healthy international relations. But he's also made it clear that Canada won't be bullied. In his speeches, Trudeau has often highlighted the importance of standing up for Canadian values and sovereignty. This message resonates deeply with Canadians, who see their country as a strong and independent nation. And in a surprising twist, this tough stance on trade has actually boosted Trudeau's popularity at home. Canadians appreciate a leader who is willing to take a stand, even if it means facing off against larger powers. This has translated into increased support for Trudeau and his policies. Canadians, it seems, admire a leader who stands up for their interests, even when it means going toe-to-toe with the big guy next door. This sentiment is reflected in the everyday lives of Canadians, from families watching the news to people shopping in local markets. The sense of national pride and unity is palpable, and it all stems from a leadership that is unafraid to defend its people and its principles. Section 7. The energy ace up Canada's sleeve. Now, if this trade war were a poker game, Canada would be sitting on a pretty powerful ace energy. Canada is a major supplier of oil, natural gas, and electricity to the US. In fact, they're America's largest foreign supplier of crude oil. So far, Canada has resisted the temptation to use this energy leverage as a bargaining chip in the trade war. But if things were to escalate further, Canada could always threaten to restrict energy exports to the US, a move that would send shockwaves through the American economy. It's a high-stakes gamble, but it's one that Canada might be willing to take if pushed too far. Section 8. From trade partners to trade barriers, the global view. This US-Canada trade war isn't just a North American affair, it's sending ripples throughout the global economy. Other countries are watching closely, some with amusement, others with growing concern. The European Union, for example, has been quick to capitalize on the trade tensions between the US and Canada, positioning themselves as a more reliable trading partner. Meanwhile, China, never one to miss an opportunity, has been strengthening its ties with Canada, seeing it as a potential ally in its own trade disputes with the US. The world is watching, and the outcome of this trade war could have far-reaching consequences for the global trading system. Section 9. The real cost of a trade war. Empty plates and uncertain futures. So, after all this talk of tariffs and trade deficits, let's not forget the real cost of this trade war. The human cost. It's easy to get lost in the numbers and the economic theories, but behind every statistic is a person, a family, a community. These are the people who bear the brunt of the decisions made in boardrooms and government offices. Behind the statistics and economic jargon are real people whose lives are being upended. These are the faces of the trade war, the ones who are often overlooked in the grand scheme of things. They are the ones who have to deal with the immediate consequences, the ones who have to make tough choices every single day. Farmers struggling to make ends meet, watching their crops wither away due to lack of resources or market access. These are the people who feed our nations, yet they are the ones who are most vulnerable in times of economic strife. Their livelihoods are tied to the land, and when trade policies fail, they are left with empty fields and empty promises. Families forced to choose between putting food on the table and paying their bills, a heartbreaking reality that many face. The dinner table, once a place of comfort and togetherness, becomes a stark reminder of the sacrifices they have to make. The stress of financial instability seeps into every aspect of their lives, affecting their health, their relationships, and their future prospects. Workers facing an uncertain future as factories close down, leaving them without a source of income. These are the people who have dedicated their lives to their jobs, only to find themselves cast aside when times get tough. The ripple effects of these closures are felt throughout entire communities, as local businesses suffer and the social fabric begins to fray. These are the real casualties of this trade war. It's not just about numbers on a balance sheet. It's about human lives, dreams, and aspirations being shattered. The emotional toll is immense, and the scars left behind can last for generations. Communities that once thrived are now struggling to hold on, their sense of identity and purpose eroded by forces beyond their control. And the saddest part? It didn't have to be this way. This entire conflict is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how trade works. Trade isn't a zero-sum game where one country wins and the other loses. It's a complex web of interdependence where the success of one is tied to the success of all. When we fail to recognize this, we all suffer. This entire conflict is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how trade works. Trade isn't a zero-sum game where one country wins and the other loses. It's about cooperation, interdependence, and mutual benefit. When we erect barriers to trade, we hurt ourselves just as much as we hurt our trading partners. The ripple effects of these decisions are far-reaching, affecting not just the economy but the very fabric of our societies. Trade isn't a zero-sum game where one country wins and the other loses. It's about cooperation, interdependence, and mutual benefit. When we work together, we can achieve so much more than we ever could alone. The benefits of trade are not just economic. They are social, cultural, and even environmental. By fostering connections and understanding, we can build a more prosperous and harmonious world. It's about cooperation, interdependence, and mutual benefit. When we erect barriers to trade, we hurt ourselves just as much as we hurt our trading partners. The ripple effects of these decisions are far-reaching, affecting not just the economy but the very fabric of our societies. It's time for both the US and Canada to come to their senses, put an end to this senseless trade war, and start rebuilding the bridges of trust and cooperation that have been so badly damaged. When we erect barriers to trade, we hurt ourselves just as much as we hurt our trading partners. The ripple effects of these decisions are far-reaching, affecting not just the economy, but the very fabric of our societies. It's time for both the US and Canada to come to their senses, put an end to this senseless trade war, and start rebuilding the bridges of trust and cooperation that have been so badly damaged. It's time for both the US and Canada to come to their senses, put an end to this senseless trade war, and start rebuilding the bridges of trust and cooperation that have been so badly damaged. The future of our economies and the livelihoods of millions of people depend on it. We have the power to change the course of this conflict, to turn it into an opportunity for growth and renewal. Put an end to this senseless trade war, and start rebuilding the bridges of trust and cooperation that have been so badly damaged. The future of our economies and the livelihoods of millions of people depend on it. We have the power to change the course of this conflict, to turn it into an opportunity for growth and renewal. By working together, we can create a brighter future for all, and start rebuilding the bridges of trust and cooperation that have been so badly damaged. The future of our economies and the livelihoods of millions of people depend on it. We have the power to change the course of this conflict, to turn it into an opportunity for growth and renewal. By working together, we can create a brighter future for all. Let's not let this trade war define us. Instead, let it be a catalyst for positive change. The future of our economies and the livelihoods of millions of people depend on it. We have the power to change the course of this conflict, to turn it into an opportunity for growth and renewal. By working together, we can create a brighter future for all. Let's not let this trade war define us. Instead, let it be a catalyst for positive change. The choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow. Let's choose wisely.